Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our CESA Youth Leadership and Engineering Entrepreneur webinar. My name is Renee Peterson, and I will be your facilitator for today. Just to give you a bit of background about myself, I am employed by SMEC South Africa in the Roads and Highways Division with the focus on traffic and transportation, and I sit in the Cape Town office. Before we get started, please allow me to give you some background about CESA and CESA YPF. Consulting Engineers South Africa, better known as CESA, is an NPO that was established in 1952. The Young Professional Forum, or as we know it, YPF, is a branch of CESA that was established in 2004. The aim of the YPF was to allow young professionals from both private and public sectors under the age of 35 to participate in our events and build networks within and beyond the industry. If you would like to join or find out more about us, please go to CESA's website at www.cesa.co.za. CESA's vision, mission, and objectives are to promote the engineering and built environment profession, build capacity and knowledge amongst YPs through networking and information sharing, as well as creating a platform for engineering practitioners to liaise and share best practices. This series of webinars, initiated by CESA in 2019, is aimed specifically at closing the skills gap in the engineering environment through empowering our youth. Underlying the reach for the seminar is the philosophy to share unique experiences by senior consulting engineers, which will result in more informed young professionals. This will help young professionals to make informed choices and grow within the firm of their employment or start their own consulting engineering firm. Three broad topics that have been identified for the leadership and engineering seminars was engineering, business and entrepreneurship, engineering and career options, and also the YPF, also known as Young Professional Forum. It is in the spirit of the NDP Vision 2030 theme, Our Future Makes It Work, that we are inviting senior engineers to invest in our youth and development of South African consulting engineers' skills that are critical to eliminating the elimination of poverty, reduction of inequality, creation of jobs, and protection of lives and economic growth. Next, I would like to thank our sponsors who support us annually and helps us or allows us to have events like this. The program is as follows. First, I have spoken. Next, I will be introducing Jamal Sahib, and then we will have a conversation between myself and him, and we'll open the floor up to Q&A, and we'll have the closing remarks by Uzair Osman. For this webinar, we've added some stats which shows who is attending the webinar, and we have 86% consulting engineers, 3% construction and contractors, and 11% from government. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest speaker, Jamal Sahib, author, business coach, and entrepreneur. Jamal Sahib has taken his engineering background and MBA from GIB and embarked on opening a series of new business ventures, including coaching and consulting practices, Africa 32. This practice has brought Jamal into contact with entrepreneurs, experts, managers, and professionals from a range of industries and backgrounds. Helping fellow entrepreneurs to achieve extraordinary outcomes makes his work deeply rewarding, as he firmly believes we all have the power to change our future. So Jamal is a business owner and entrepreneur who is helping small business to grow and together to make South Africa great again. Jamal, over to you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Renee. Quite an interesting lineup for the afternoon in terms of conversations. So my strategy or my style is something that I like to call leadership through storytelling. So I'll introduce myself and I'll tell you a bit of my story. And I also have a bit of a presentation that I want to take you through. And it's not going to be death by PowerPoint, because I use slides more as a cue than rather something to talk through. So a little bit about me. I grew up in a small town in KZN called Escort, and that's something that Uzair and I share in common. So we grew up in the same town, just some years apart. So I think I was sort of one generation before him. And on completing high school, decided I wanted to study engineering. So I had a scholarship at that time with BHP Billiton. It's when BHP had, merged with Billiton and formed BHP Billiton. And they formed one of the largest mining conglomerates on the planet at the time, which was really, really awesome. And so I was in high school and wanted to study engineering. And my dad, who was an Indian business owner in the town of Escort, he had a general dealer store for 32 years. He opened the shop every day and he sold stuff to people. He said to me, son, you need to become a doctor. Please go to med school. And I just said to him, no, I don't want to go to med school. Because at that time, my brother, who was 10 years older than me, was a graduated medical doctor already. And he was working in provincial hospitals and doing his internship in community service. And he complained about how when Chiefs and Pirates played, people came in, stabbed, shot, drunk. And while he's trying to stitch them, they were busy puking on him. And he didn't paint a pretty picture. So I thought, you know what, maybe medicine's not for me, because I didn't think I had the patience, pun intended. But more than that, with my brother and I, there was always this sort of passive competition where I came in behind him and I wanted to try and break some records that he had set. And I decided now I wanted to study engineering because I heard that engineering was more difficult than medicine. So I know we can have this debate. And even when I was at varsity, I had friends that were studying medicine, and there was always this thing that engineers were smarter than doctors, and the doctors would try and make us believe that they were smarter than engineers. So I decided now I want to study medicine, and I'll never forget. I was awarded the BHP Billiton scholarship when I was in matric to study medicine, to study engineering the next year. And my dad called me and he sat me down and he said, son, I'm worried that you want to study engineering because you're worried about me having to pay for your university. And now you've got a scholarship for engineering, but I will do what we need to do to make the sacrifices to send you to med school if you want to go to med school. And I said, no, Dad, I actually want to study engineering. I want to do something different. There's nobody in our family, in our social circle that we knew that were engineers. And I wanted to do something different. So my dad said to me, he said, son, you see, we're Indian. So it's either you become a doctor or you open a shop. I don't understand this engineering thing. What if you become an engineer and you can't find a job? Who do I phone? So for me, it's a joke up until today because, we grow up in these worlds and we have these certain stereotypes, and some of them are real, right? Some of them are really real. That's what my dad said to me. He said, go and study medicine or open a shop because that's what we know. If you study engineering and you can't find a job, who do I phone? What do we do? How do we deal with that? And I said to him, no, Dad, I really want to do this engineering thing. And I went off to Tux and I studied engineering and graduated as an engineer and had to work for BHP Billiton because I had to work back some time. And as an engineer in training, I absolutely, absolutely hated what I did. As an engineer in training, you were treated as this person that has textbook knowledge but knows nothing about life. And people with experience that didn't have a qualification, they didn't treat engineers in training in the early 2000s as you would expect they would have treated you. So I really didn't enjoy that first couple of months being an engineer in training. In fact, I typed an email to the Dean of the Faculty of Medicine at Wits University because I was considering going to study medicine after becoming an engineer. And Wits at the time, if you had a science undergrad, you could do a medical degree in 5 years instead of the normal 6. Where it was 6 at most other places besides UKZN. So I typed this email and I saved it. And then I did a financial calculation to see the impact based on my current salary with projected increases over a period of time, having to go back to med school, finishing med school, internship, community service, specialization. And I did a calculation like a real engineer back then to see at what point would the financial loss actually cross over if I had gone the medical route. And I think I would have only gotten back to my projection at the age of like 51 or 52. And I thought, you know what, there must be a different way. So I started to work more in the space of people management and less in the space of technical engineering, and realized that that was something I really, really enjoyed. So I quite quickly went through the ranks, engineering training. I was appointed production engineer. I then in 2010 did the PDBA at Gibbs, which is the postgrad diploma in business admin. And it started to make me look at business differently. We started to look at things like organizational culture. We started to look at things like macroeconomics and microeconomics. And we looked at things like HR and, a bit of ops management, which, we had covered in engineering. But there were these other softer skills around business, around organizational cultures and how culture eats strategy for breakfast. And that really started to intrigue me. And then I started to study the psychology of people and how to get optimum performance out of people through understanding people. And quite quickly, I moved away. So I then left BHP Billiton in 2011 and joined Anglo American Platinum. And in 2012, was called back to BHP Billiton, and I moved to the mines in the Northern Cape. So I moved to the BHP Billiton Mama Tuan manganese mine as a production superintendent leading people. And I then quite quickly became known as Mr. Fix-It. So I would go into a department, I'd fix it in a period of time, and I'd move on. And the interesting thing is, I spent less time on the technical and more time on the people. And that approach worked for me. And we managed to fix areas of the business and deliver massive, massive revenue and profitability to different divisions within organizations by working through people. And I would often walk into a room, appoint a new manager in the area. There was a time where I moved into an area and I was the manager of an area where people that were working there started working there in the year in which I was born. And I had to get in there and I had to lead the team. And my approach was simple. My approach would be, guys, there's nobody that knows this technical center plant better than you do. You guys are here for 29, 30 years, right? I'm here to get you guys and ladies to work together, right? And that's my skill. My skill is understanding different people's strengths, getting people to work together, and through that process, build the trust of people, and they would then fix a division or department. So at that point, I realized now I was starting to do what I was actually meant to do. But I was fortunate because BHP Billiton in the late 2000s, they were on a drive to sort of change the demographic within the leadership of the organization. And I don't believe in luck, but I do believe in fate. And I was fortunate enough to be at the right place at the right time. So I had the right qualification, and they saw potential in me. And so they appointed a coach to coach me in a fast-tracked development program for leadership. And that process for me started in 2012. So in 2012, they put me on this fast-track leadership program with a very well-known coach at the time, a highly paid coach, an executive coach that had many, many years of experience coaching executives. And there were two components to it. So I had a coach that was external to the business, that was paid for by the organization. And internally within the organization, I had a mentor. So I had a mentor in the business. That was sort of like my sponsor. There was somebody that would sort of open a way for me as I was moving through my career trajectory. And I had this coach that was developing the way I thought. And the combination of the two worked like a bomb, because I went from engineering training to 3-1A legal appointed mine manager in 5.5 years, which is sort of unheard of, especially in an organization as big as BHP Billiton, right? So I found my niche, and my niche was actually managing people, leading people, and building divisions within organizations through people. And in 2015, I embarked on the MBA at Gibbs. So 2015-16, I did the MBA. And halfway through the MBA, I realized that I was sort of done with the corporate bureaucracy. I was done with the retrenchments. I was done with the restructuring. And I had the realization back then that so I'm passionate about South Africa, right? I was offered a job in Switzerland in 2016 and opted to stay because I love this country. I'm a nostalgic person. If I hear a bird make a certain sound, it reminds me of my youth. I feel like I'm walking in the Drakensberg. You know, that's me. So I want to be a part of the growth of this country, and that has been my driver. And you know, I'm quite controversial at times, guys. So where I am controversial, please bear with me. We all have our own ways of thinking, and it's never my intention to make you think like me. You may think like how you think, but I can give you a couple of ideas on how to look at stuff differently. But I once said to somebody that I would rather get shot in my head in South Africa at the age of 40 than live till 80 in a country that's not where my passion lies. Because what's the point being safe and living from 35 till 80, but being unhappy and longing for home, which is actually what South Africa is, right? It's my home. So I'm quite controversial like that, and that's the reality. I love traveling, don't get me wrong. I've been to many countries. I absolutely love traveling. But when I get back at OR Tambo and I check in at passport control, I have this feeling that goes, I'm home. And that's how I know that my work is in this country. So in 2015, I was part of a task team that had to restructure division in the organization because the commodity price dropped significantly and the options were restructure or close down. So the power prices went up, the commodity price dropped, and it became financially unfeasible to run that part of the business the way it was being run at the time. So for weeks, I could not sleep because we had to retrench people, and people actually sort of became numbers, you know, and I really didn't enjoy it. And for the first time in my career, I would wake up in the morning and not feel like going to work for the first time ever. And I then took a decision that I was going to go out and create jobs. And the reality is that government should not be creating jobs in this country. It is not the role of government to create jobs. It's not. It is the role of government to create an environment for entrepreneurs to create jobs. Why? Because when government creates jobs, those salaries need to be paid for through tax. It's finite. That burden comes back to the people. When entrepreneurs create jobs, an entrepreneur is somebody that takes a whole lot of nothings and puts it together and forms something that creates employment, and through that process generates money almost out of nothing. So as an entrepreneur, if we can grow this country through as entrepreneurs and produce stuff in this country that we can export, we can get FDI in, money will flow into our country. We can then use that money to pay people salary, and that's how you create jobs, right? Not through government. So government needs to create the environment for entrepreneurs to create the jobs, because we will create jobs, we will create something out of nothing, and through the process, we will generate revenue, and from that revenue, we will be able to pay people, create employment, and also pay more tax, right? So that's my stance on it. I also found that from the 2000s, the corporates were not creating jobs anymore. Corporates are not massive on job creation. Corporates are more focused on optimizing for shareholder growth, for profitability, for dividend payout, and that's how it should be. I mean, that's why people are in business, right? You're in business so you can make money. Investors invest in corporates, in large organizations that are listed so that they can get a return on their investment. So what does that then mean? It means that it's up to us as entrepreneurs, as the SMEs, to create jobs. And in 2015, I realized that I needed to go out and I needed to create jobs. That was my driver. When I resigned from corporate, I had 3 slides: situation, complication, resolution, which I presented to my boss at the time, who was the VP of projects. And he asked me to think about it and come back. And I said, okay, cool. And then I went back with this 3-slide presentation, and he could see my mind was made. But in that little presentation, what I said to him was, the situation was that we needed to create jobs in this country. I'm passionate about this country. I believe there is no better country on the planet than South Africa. There is no better country. We've got the resources, we've got the climate, we've got the oceans, we've got, I mean, Renee will tell you that Cape Town's quite pretty, but yeah, she'll butter it up a little bit. You know, these people that live in Cape Town. We've got the oceans, we've got the mountains in the Drakensberg. We've got an absolutely beautiful culture. I mean, if you look at during the looting, the way people stood together, we have an amazing country. The reality is there are things that scare me in this country. The one is the high crime rate. The second one is the rate at which people die on our roads in this country. Those 2 things freak me out. So with respect to the roads, I made a conscious decision and I've purchased more practical, safer vehicles. I mean, you know, obviously there's an affordability, there's an affordability component, but both for myself and for my wife, we've got these high vehicles that have good NCAP ratings, good lighting. So we've taken a conscious decision around those things. We've also taken a conscious decision to not drive on South Africa's roads during certain times of the year. So it's very rare that you'd find me on the roads during Easter, because we know that over Easter weekend, there are 1,000 fatalities on our roads, right? So the risk is extremely high at that time. We also don't travel late at night. So between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m., the probability you'll find me on the road is very, very slim, unless it's an emergency of some sort and I need to help somebody. So those are conscious decisions we've taken in that space. But in the space of crime, in the short term, we opted to live in a security estate so that from a crime perspective, it's a bit safer. But that is quite selfish, right? That's just us. But what are we doing for the country? And that's where the realization hit me, that the crime is directly related to 2 things. The first one that it's related to is it's related to the high Gini coefficient in South Africa. Now, South Africa has not one of the, but we have the highest Gini coefficient in the world, meaning the divide between the rich and the poor is huge. And we need to do something about that. The second reason for high crime is the massively high unemployment in this country. Any country with high unemployment, the crime rate goes up. So we sit with a high crime rate that's directly linked to the high unemployment. So I thought, if I love this country and I want to live in this country, and if the crime rate freaks me out, what can I do to reduce that, to reduce the level of crime rate? I can help to create jobs in whatever way or form that I can. So I exited corporate in between 2015 and 16. And I started a consultancy called Africa 32 Business Consulting. So I consulted back to the mines for a period of time. I still do some consulting work to the mines. I'm a registered vendor with 2 mining operations. And I then started retail businesses of my own. So we started the first one in 2017. And since then, we now have 5 retail businesses. 4 of them are hardware stores. Well, the one is actually split into 3 because it's a paint contracting company. We paint houses and we do waterproof, dam-proof, that kind of stuff, and painting in estates in the Pretoria area. We have 4 hardware stores. We have an LP gas business where we distribute LPG gas for Afrox. And the 5th business is actually a florist and a luxury gifting store. And I'm in the process of opening a flower wholesale, which we should open sometime next year. And since 2017 until now, we have crossed the 100 mark in terms of direct employment. So my companies directly employ 100 people right now, and we've managed to achieve that in 4 years. So the interesting thing is that that is actually my hobby, because my primary business is my business consultancy, or my coaching practice, as I call it. So being fascinated about coaching and the impact that it had on my life, and realizing that if I tried to create employment myself, I would be able to employ a few people at a time and grow my business. But if I coached businesses and those businesses grew and they could create more employment, then the employment rate would be exponential, right? So in 2017, I trained as a business coach and I started coaching. And to date, I coach every single week 18 people. I coach 18 people for 1 hour every week. I coach a couple of the companies that I coach. I coach the Hypercheck group in KZN. They own the Checkout, CheckSave, Checkstar supermarkets. I coach that brand. I coach Pam Golding in Durban, Westville, Pinetown, and the South Coast. I coach a company called the Onsite Group, which is an IT company that specializes in Apple software for integrating Apple devices. I coach a company called Hush Echo. They do acoustic panels. I coach a cardiothoracic surgeon. I coach an ENT surgeon. So I've got a list of clients that I coach in all different parts of South Africa. So I coach from KZN to Gauteng to the Western Cape. I coach people from, in fact, I coach a company that does manufacturing in the metal and steel industry as well. So sort of engineering related, but not necessarily that. So that's my passion is coaching. I'm in the process of franchising my coaching business, because the idea is I believe we need to have more business coaches out in the country that help people grow their business in a more structured fashion. It just increases the probability of success significantly. I've engaged with a franchising firm that is currently busy with the structure for the franchise. And we're hoping by March, April next year, we'll launch the Africa 32 business coaching franchise powered by Jamal Sahib. And that's the route we're going. So that's just a little bit about me and in a nutshell, what I've done and my angle, right? So I'm now going to jump into a couple of slides, and I want to show you where we place different people on what we call the ladder of wealth. So I'll go for another 20 odd minutes or so. No, another 30 minutes. I'll go for another 30 odd minutes on that. And then we'll open up the floor to conversation. So all the questions that you have, please write them down. We'll try and get through as many as we can. And we'll do a bit of engagement and interaction. Cool. So I want to share my slides with you. Okay. So maybe just to take a step back, the foundation to coaching, and in fact, if you ask me, in my book, this is one of the chapters in my book. One of the foundations to success is understanding this simple slide. And it forms the foundation for me coaching anywhere and everywhere. So if you've joined a webinar of mine at any point in the last few years, you would have seen this slide. Now, we've found that there are only two types of people in the world. There are people that live their lives above the line of power. You see the little blue line there? There are people that live their lives above the line of power, and those people are seen to be as successful people, or those people are actually successful people. Then you have the people that live their lives below the line of power, and those are what I call unsuccessful people. Now, we've managed to simplify and we've managed to identify the characteristics that are shared by people that live their lives above the line. And there are three common characteristics of people that live their lives above the line. Those three characteristics are: successful people take ownership, accountability, and responsibility for everything in their lives. So they will take ownership, accountability, responsibility of their own careers, of their own work, of their own families, of their own communities, and of their own societies. So I want you to think of, and sorry, we can do the converse. So you will find that if you know of somebody successful, you will see that they take ownership, accountability, and responsibility for everything around them. So I'd like you to close your eyes and picture somebody in your world, in your social circle, or in your business circle, or in your work circle, or in your life. I want you to picture somebody that you see as successful. Now I want you to think, does that person take ownership, accountability, and responsibility for everything around them? And 10 out of 10 times, it'll be a yes. Successful people take ownership, accountability, and responsibility for everything around them. They energize people and teams. You'll find it's the same people that are delivering what they need to deliver at work, in the business, in the organization. You'll find it's the same people that are involved in the community. You'll find that it's the same people that are involved in structures like these, right? The CESA, YPF. You'll find it's the same people that are involved in the local community, churches, mosques, temples. You'll find it's the same people that are involved in the local soccer club. If they have kids, they are on the school governing body, on the PTA. How come? How come? How come it's the people that are busy at work, that are delivering, adding value, creating jobs? It's the same people that are involved in the school, in society. How come? It's because they take ownership, accountability, and responsibility for everything around them. And that's the definition of a successful human. Conversely, you have people that live, sorry, not conversely, on the opposite side of the line, you have people that live their lives below the line of power. Those people are unsuccessful people, and they are powerless. The three characteristics that all of them share is that they blame, they make excuses, and they live in denial. Denial is where they lie to themselves for such a long period of time that it actually becomes their version of the truth. In fact, most people that you ask that are unemployed, if you ask them why they can't find a job, they'll tell you, the economy is bad. No, it's COVID, it's a recession, and there'll be a whole list of excuses as to why people cannot find a job. Let me tell you, I cannot find enough good people to work for me. We set up interviews, we invite 15 people to interviews, 3 people pitch. Yet the 12 people that didn't pitch, if you bump into them and it's a family member or friend of yours on the weekend and you ask them why are they unemployed, they'll tell you it's because the economy is bad and it's COVID and nobody's employing, and. They have excuses. They'll blame the economy. They'll have excuses. And they will actually believe those excuses, and it becomes their version of the truth, which is denial. So I want you to think of somebody in your social circle, in your business circle, somebody that's always blaming, somebody that's always got excuses. They miss a deadline, they've got an excuse. Your colleagues, they miss a deadline, they've got an excuse. When something goes wrong, why didn't you submit this on time? No, because so and so didn't send me what they were supposed to send me on time. That's blaming somebody else. If you needed to deliver something and somebody didn't send you what you needed, you should have proactively gotten what you needed from them so that you could meet your deadline or communicate early. You cannot wait until you miss your own deadline and then say, no, I missed my deadline because somebody else didn't give me what they were supposed to give me. That's blaming. And you will never be successful if you are that kind of a human, right? So you will find that people that are unsuccessful, they blame, they make excuses, and they live in denial. And conversely, If you know of people that are always blaming, always making excuses, they live in denial, and you look at them in detail, you will see that they are unsuccessful humans. Simple as that. Cool. So then I often come across people that I call know-it-alls. Myself, I mean, I've spent many years studying stuff, and I feel like I haven't scratched the surface of knowledge that's available out there. I have a personal pet peeve if I'm trying to have a conversation with somebody and they say, yeah, I know. And I stand there thinking, oh my goodness gracious. When you say I know, you stop conversation and then you stop learning for yourself. Because even if I wanted to continue engaging with you, and maybe we got to a point where we spoke about something that you could have learned that you didn't know, you've stopped the conversation now by going, I know. And those kind of people, unfortunately, they don't grow. So a bit about learning, it's what you learn after you know it all that actually counts. And that was said by John Wooden. So I absolutely love this. So today, my intention is that through this conversation and the time that we spend together, if at least one person can learn one thing, then I have been successful in my day. So I woke up this morning and my intent was, if I could learn one thing from one person, and if I could teach one person one thing, then I've had a successful day. Cool. So let's jump into a little bit of business. Oh, but before that, before we jump into business. So I read something quite interesting once, and it said, the time, money, and effort that you spend on personal development is time, money, and effort better spent than the time, money, and effort that you spent on knowledge and education. So I'm going to say it again. The time, money, and effort that you spend on personal development is worth more than the time, money, and effort that you spend on knowledge and education. So what is personal development? Personal development is the expansion of the mind. Personal development is about thinking differently. Personal development is about becoming the best version of yourself every single day. Now, knowledge and education are narrow and deep. They are narrow and deep. You can know a hell of a lot about structures, right? But personal development is that part of the brain that as you expand and become a better person of a better version of yourself, it allows this mind to be able to amplify your knowledge and your education. So that's how you go from being a metallurgical engineer to being a business coach and entrepreneur, because you're trying to use this knowledge and spread it wider than just this pillar in which you find it, right? So personal development is about the growth of the mind. Personal development is about conscious awareness. It's about being consciously aware about how you speak to people, how you interact with people. I mean, it's being consciously aware about people's level of IQ. It's about being consciously aware of your own level of EQ, emotional intelligence. It's being consciously aware of other people's emotional intelligence. I mean, if you're driving and a taxi driver cuts you off on the road, should you start hooting and swearing at them? The probability is you shouldn't. You should actually apply a different approach, right? Because it's about the end in mind. What outcome do you want? It's about that conscious awareness about constantly being a better version of yourself, right? So I spend a lot of my time when I coach people. There are two components. There's life and business. My book is called Start with the End in Mind, the 5 Secrets to Life and Business Success, right? Because I believe that both go hand in hand. You know, you can't have one without the other, because there's always an overflow between business and life. Cool. So let's talk about business. What is a business? So yeah, guys, I don't know if you can see this banner, but it came down for some reason. Try and move this to the bottom. There we go. That's a bit better. So what is business? Brad Sugar's definition of a business is it's a commercial, profitable enterprise that works without you. So if you have to be there every single day, it's not really a business, right? So I'm sitting here having an awesome conversation with you guys, and I have a retail business that's running. They don't need me there all the time every day. I spend probably 10 to 20 hours a week interacting with the team in that business. Growth should be your goal. In business, growth should be your goal. As a person, as a human, growth should be your goal as well, right? So if you're not growing, you're dying. There's no in between. So growth needs to be your goal. And then in business, you need to build wealth, not just cash flow. And that's the difference between employment and business. In business, we try to build wealth, not just cash flow. So a business, guys, I'm really sorry about this. I don't know why it just popped up suddenly. Okay, anyhow. So a business should pay you in 3 ways. And this is one of the other reasons I'm fascinated with business, is a business should pay you in profit. It should pay you for the work that you do in the form of a salary. So if I own a business, I draw a salary and I need to make a profit. And the third way that a business should pay you is it should pay you through the value of the asset that you've created. So you need to be able to create a business where at some point, if you decide, you know what, I've had a good run, it's time for me to sell up or sell shares in my business, or you should be able to value that business and sell it off to get a whole chunk of money in at that time. So this is the cool part about business versus being employed, right? When you're employed, you earn a salary, which is just a cash flow. When you're in business, you get to do 3. You get a piece of the dividend, which is profit. You get a salary, and you create a value. Sorry, you create an asset of value. So that's what business is actually about. Now, there's this thing called the ladder of wealth. Now, the ladder of wealth has different levels. The first level on the ladder of wealth is the level called the level of the student. Now, we've all been down that road. If you're on this call, you probably were at some university or technical college to get a qualification and graduate as an engineer of some sort. Or I think you'd be working in the built environment, the world of built environment. So you've spent the time as being a student. Then the natural progression would be that you would become an employee. And many people spend significant parts of their lives in that space where they work as an employee. You know, in the 70s, it was get an education, get a good job, work at the post office, get a good pension, and then retire. So people would spend 40, 50 years in employment. Other people decide, you know what, I'm going to start a business of my own, and then they become self-employed. And sometimes then they employ a couple of people, become managers. So I want to take you through each of these steps where you move from manager then to business owner, and then you move to investor, and what does that really mean? And then you move to the ultimate level, which is the ultimate level, which is the level of the entrepreneur. And I'll explain each of these steps of the ladder of wealth to you shortly. I think somewhere when social media started, everybody became an entrepreneur. So a guy doesn't have 2 cents to rub together, but he's an entrepreneur because he's selling PPE masks. Guys, that's not an entrepreneur, that's a hustler. There's a huge, huge difference between an entrepreneur and a hustler. So I see there's this major driver these days, everybody's an entrepreneur. So if you're selling chappies, you're an entrepreneur. If you're selling, as I said, you know, COVID masks, you're an entrepreneur. If you're selling hand sanitizer, you're an entrepreneur. No, you're not an entrepreneur, you're hustling. In fact, I'm not sure where hustler fits on this ladder of wealth thing, but we'll figure it out in a bit. Maybe it's self-employed. Yeah, I think hustlers fits, it's a category of self-employment. Entrepreneur is actually the ultimate level. Now, if you had to picture an entrepreneur would be somebody like Jeff Bezos. An entrepreneur would be somebody like, South African context would be a, what's his name? Seriti Resources, Mike Teke. An entrepreneur right now would be a Patrice Motsepe. An entrepreneur right now would be Richard Branson. Those are entrepreneurs, right? On the large scale. But you get entrepreneurs on a smaller scale, which we can become in a few years if we follow the right recipe. So climbing this ladder is like baking a cake. There are ingredients, and you have to put in the right ingredients, and you have to follow the right steps in the recipe to get there, right? Unless the electricity goes off while you're baking the cake halfway, then it might flop. But we'll try not to let that happen. Cool. So let's chat a little bit about the first level, which is the level of the student. Now we call this level -1. -1. The student is level -1 on the ladder of wealth. Why? Because the student is sort of, actually, let's cut the long story short. It costs you money at this stage. You have to pay fees to learn. So it takes money out of your pocket. So if it's taking money out of your pocket, it's negative, right? So whether you went to university or whether you started a job as an apprentice, which is actually a student as well, apprentices don't earn much money. They are apprentices, meaning they're actually students, and the money that they get paid is not a salary. It's more just to help them to be able to get to work and back and survive while they're learning, kind of thing, right? So the level of the student is -1. It takes money out of your pocket. Now, here, basic knowledge is needed to learn skills in the workplace. If you are an apprentice or if you graduate, well, actually, if you're university as well, you have a certain basic knowledge level before you are allowed into university to study, which is on level -1. Hopefully you make it out of being a student, and then you make it to level 0. Level 0 is the level of the employee. Now, it doesn't mean that you are a 0. It means that it's that level where you start to pay back the money that you've spent on learning. So if you're at university, you pay back your student loans. If you didn't have a student loan, you're fortunate enough, you pay back the time lost, because time is money as well. So the revenue that you get in, or the salary that you get in, sort of offsets some of the losses from the prior years. So Rung 0 is the level of the employee. Now, during this time, it's also a really, really good time for you to learn about business. It's the best place to make mistakes, because you're making mistakes at somebody else's cost. So that if you decide to go into business, you've learned a lot of the things that you shouldn't do when you're in your own business, when you're working for somebody else. So that's one of the advantages of being an employee, right? The next level then becomes what we call, so some people, they work for a couple of years and they decide, you know what, I can't take my bosses anymore. So I'm going to start my own business. I mean, let's not use engineering as the example. Let's use the guy is running an ice cream factory for somebody. He decides, you know what, I'm so tired of taking the nonsense here. I'm going to open, how hard can it be? I'm going to open my own business and start selling ice cream. Then he or she moves to the level of self-employed, and that's level 1. Now, when you are self-employed, you have to do everything. It's like a seesaw, because you're working in the business and you're working on the business, right? You are the marketing person, the sales person, the ops person, the logistics person, the receptionist, the firefighter, the accounts person, the debtors clerk, the creditors clerk. You everything. And 80% of businesses fail at this level due to lack of skills. Guys, gals, we spend years and years learning how to be a professional of some sort. How much of time do we spend learning to be business owners? Right now, I currently coach an optometrist. I coach 2 ear, nose, and throat surgeons, ENTs, and I coach a cardiothoracic surgeon. And my conversation with them is simple. You guys have spent the optometrist 5 years and then internship. The cardiothoracic and the ENT surgeons, it's 6 years medicine, 1 year, 2 years community, 1 year internship, 2 years community service. That's 9 years, and then another 4 years to specialize. So it's 13 years. You guys study for 13 years to become really, really good medical specialists. But where did you study how to run a business? So 80% of businesses fail at this level due to lack of skills. You have engineers that go out there, they start their own consultancies. They've learned for many years how to be consultants and how to be engineers, but they don't take the time to learn how to run a business. Now, business, if you have no customer, you have no business. You can be one of the best engineers on the planet, but if you don't understand how to attain a customer, acquire a customer, and retain a customer and bill a customer correctly, you will not be in business for a long time. So 80% of businesses fail at this point because people are self-employed. They're trying to do everything themselves, and there's a lack of skill in significant components of the business. But some people make it out of this level. They make it to the next stage. And the next stage is the stage of the manager. Now you are making a little bit of money, so you decide, I'm going to appoint an admin person. That person is going to type up my quotes, send out my quotes. They're going to answer the phone. They're going to follow up on payments. You employ one person, and then you realize, oh, that one's not cutting it. So you employ another one. So now you start to employ people, and you go from the seesaw to the merry-go-round. Because now suddenly people don't do it as well as you feel you were doing it. So now you're running around putting out fires because your employees are actually messing stuff up. Now you need to phone the client and apologize that the quote's late. You need to phone the client and follow up, yet you are employing people. Now that's level 2, it's the level of the manager, where you start to manage people and you realize that you actually, sometimes when you're a manager, you're actually a firefighter. You end up fighting fires more than you do anything else, right? And at this point, there needs to come the realization that there's more. You need to learn how to lead. You need to learn how to implement the right systems in your organization, how to recruit the right people, how to have the right systems for them to follow the system to be able to deliver the result that you need. Now, what happens is people employ people, they go, cool, I'm bringing you in, you're going to figure out how we're going to get our quotations out on time. Unfortunately, it is the responsibility of the business owner to create the system, and then the employee runs the system. You cannot bring in an employee and expect the employee to build the system. So at this point, the manager is so flustered running around managing people, putting out fires, that they don't realize that they need to actually stop doing that and spend the time rather building the system, training the people, recruiting the right people, and then the system starts to work and deliver the results that it needs to deliver. And that's where we enter level 3. Level 3 is the level of the business owner. In the level of the business owner, you start to realize that business is not about busyness. You know, you have a lot of people that are self-employed, or you know, they've just started their businesses, and they'll tell you about how busy they are. Man, I'm busy the whole day. I start at 5, I'm in the gym. I'm 6, I'm doing this. 7, I'm doing that. 8 o'clock, I'm in the office. I work till 5. I come home. After dinner, I sit with my admin. I'm invoicing people. Business is not about busyness. Business is a commercial, profitable enterprise that can actually work without you. So you get to a point where the business starts to work without you. I can be out of my business for 2 days, 3 days, sometimes maybe for a week. And when I come back, it's running the way I left it. Obviously, there are times when I need to be there. For example, the week around month end, when we're trying to balance cash flows, make sure our creditors are paid, make sure our staff are paid, make sure that our debtors have paid us. There's that 1 week of the month that I try not to travel. It's usually from the 25th of the month till the 2nd of the month, right? So as a business owner, I'm consciously aware of those things, but the rest of the time can sort of, I can sort of make sure, I know that the business is running reasonably well without me. So you need to, as a business owner, understand that when you grow to a certain scale, you need to appoint either a GM, a general manager, or a CEO. You cannot be the owner and the general manager at once, because at the end of the day, if you are both, as the owner, you ask the CEO, if you are both the owner and the CEO, as the owner, you ask yourself as the CEO, did you do well today? And then the CEO replies to the owner, which is the same person, replying to himself, yeah, I think I did my best. But the truth is sometimes it's not. And that's why you need to eventually scale to a position where you can remain the business owner and you have a general manager or a CEO that actually reports into you, and you deal with more the monthly and quarterly strategy and the strategy for the year, and you have somebody running the operation. So that's ultimately where you want to go, right, as a business owner. Now, once you're making a lot of money as a business owner, comes the next level. The next level is known as level 4, which is the level of the investor. In the level of the investor, it's about capital. Now, as an investor, usually it means investing your own money to generate more money. So you'll invest the money that you're making in your business into opening another business or expanding your business. So it's about investment. There's enough money now for you to more than just live your life, but also invest in the growth of your balance sheet. That is the level of the investor. And that's how you go from 1 hardware store to 2 hardware stores, 3 hardware stores to 4 hardware stores. And it's about that scaling impact, because now I'm an investor. I'm able to invest my profit into growing the balance sheet component of this business. Now, remember, level 4 is the level of the investor, and it's the level where you're investing your money into the growth and expansion of the business. And as I said, the ultimate level is actually level 5. Level 5 is the level of, oh, sorry, I want to say something else here on level 4. You need to remember that a business will grow to the level of incompetence of the business owner. That's it. If the business owner is incompetent at this level onwards, meaning his level of competence is still here, that means that the business will grow till here. In order for that business to grow beyond that point, the business owner needs to grow. If the business owner grows, then only can the business grow. The business cannot grow to a point beyond the competence of the business owner. And once again, I come back to personal development. Personal development is growing as a person, growing mentally, growing to always be the best version of yourself at any given time. So if you want your business to continuously grow, you need to continuously grow. Because if you don't continuously grow, your business will hit your level of incompetence and it will stop right there. Okay, so sorry, I jumped a little bit. Now back to level 5, which is the ultimate level, and that's the level of the entrepreneur. Now, what is the level of the entrepreneur? The level of the entrepreneur is the level where you focus on raising capital and bringing in other people's ideas, other people's time and energy, and other people's money to realize a business of some sort. So the hardest work in business is learning about yourself, management, and leadership. And once you've done that, and if you've proven yourself a few times in business ventures, people start to trust you and then become confident enough to give you their money. They will invest their money with you as an entrepreneur so that you can grow their money for them by growing a business. So I remember Jeff Bezos once said, I think it was at the time where he was worth about $190 billion, lots of zeros, $190 billion. And his words were, people say that the rich are greedy. The reality is, I may be worth $190 billion, but I only own 16% of Amazon. The other 84% is wealth that I've helped to generate for thousands of other people. But people don't talk about that. They talk about the fact that the rich are greedy. It's actually the poor that are greedy because they are waiting to take and take and take. The rich give back. The rich create value for other people as well. And that's when you're on the level of the entrepreneur and you are able to take money from investors, and sometimes you put some of your own in as well, and you grow organizations, you grow businesses, you grow the GDP of a country, right? And that's ultimately where you want to be. You want to be at the level where you become an entrepreneur and you grow businesses for society, for the country. And not everybody can be a business owner. Just like not everybody can be a 100-meter sprinter like Usain Bolt, not everybody can be a really good business owner either. So therefore, it is our responsibility as people that have the ability to run businesses and run businesses well, to create employment for people that actually can't create employment for themselves, right? So a few takeaways at the end of this. So in wrapping up, okay. So my top 5 when it comes to giving advice. Jim Rohn said this, and I absolutely love it. He said, never wish your life were easier. Wish you were better. Never wish your life were easier. Wish you were better. Comes back to personal development. What are you doing for your own personal development to continuously be the best version of yourself? So never wish your life were easier. Wish you were better. Because if you wished life was easier, it would be easier for everybody and you wouldn't be any better, and therefore you were back at square one anyway. So instead of wishing life were easier, wish you were better. What does that mean? It means get off your butt and do something about it. Do what you need to do to become a better version of yourself every single day. Number 2, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Many people spend 10, 12, 14 hours working on their jobs, but they can't spend 60 minutes working on themselves. They can't work on their mental state. They can't work on their physical state. People are eating McDonald's and drinking milkshakes in the office in the middle of the day because they didn't have time to prepare a nutritional meal for that day because they're working a 14-hour day. If you take dirty fuel and you put it into a car, the chances are the car is not going to run very well for very long. If you want your car to run, take a Formula One car. You can't go and put diesel at the Shell garage, and we shouldn't even be using the word Shell right now, I know. Maybe, okay, yeah. You can't put in diesel at the BP garage into a Formula One car. But we put McDonald's and a milkshake into our bodies at lunchtime when we should be Formula One cars in what we do, right? You need to have the right level of fuel to be able to fuel yourself. So work harder on yourself than you do on your job. We don't have 60 minutes to get to the gym, but we know that physical exercise, even if it's a 5-kilometer walk, you don't even need to go to the gym. A 5-kilometer walk for your own physical health. We don't have 60 minutes for that because we're working 14 hours on a job. So my advice is you need to work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Number 3. Jim Rohn said this one as well. He says, read a book a week for the rest of your life. Now, I had the realization that the world's knowledge if I asked you a question and I said, the world, if I could make the world's knowledge available to you, would you take it? And 9 out of 10 people that I asked that question to, they've answered, yes, I would take it. And my response is, but the world's knowledge is available in the form of books. How many books have you read this year? My book's on that table. I'm reading 2 at the moment, struggling to get through the one. It's a bit of a tough read. It's called, I'm going to pick it up quickly, guys. Need to stretch my legs as well. Game Changers. Really, really interesting read. A different way to look at life and the world, right? Game Changers by Dave Asprey. Now, you don't have to believe everything you read, but everything that you read triggers thoughts in your mind for mind expansion. So the world's knowledge is available, yet we don't take it. Number 4, learn from your mistakes. Be okay with where you are in business or in life, but be excited to think about growth. What next, guys? What next? If you don't have a plan, then how do you expect to move forward? Imagine we're trying to build a skyscraper, but we have no plan. Civil engineers. Imagine we're trying to build roads, but we have no plan. How will we build the roads? But for our own lives, we have no plan. And then we can't understand why it's not going as good as we'd like it to go sometimes. Where's the blueprint, guys? And then use a coach to learn. You don't need to know or learn everything by yourself. Now here, I often use this example. Let's say there were 2 10-year-old boys, 2 10-year-old kids. Both of them similar height, both of them similar background, both of them going to the same school, both of them have the same potential. You take the one kid and you say, here's a tennis racket, here's a tennis ball. I want you to play tennis for 1 hour a day, every day, 1 hour a day, 5 days a week for the next 10 years. We'll meet again when you are 20 years old. You take the other kid, same age, same height, same potential, same background, same school. You give him a tennis racket and a tennis ball and you say to him, I want you to play tennis for 1 hour a day, 5 days a week for the next 10 years. But here's your tennis coach. This guy's an expert on coaching how to play tennis. So for that 1 hour a day, 5 days a week for the next 10 years, you're going to be coached by this world-class tennis coach. And we're going to meet again when you're 20. And when both these kids are 20 years old and they come together, the one just played tennis for 1 hour every day, 5 days a week for 10 years. The other one played tennis 1 hour a day, 5 days a week for 10 years with a world-class coach. Which kid do you think will play a better game of tennis or win the game? It's the one with a coach. The probabilities are extremely high that it will be the one with a coach. So if it's that obvious, why don't we have coaches? I've got a coach. I'm a coach, but I've got a coach because I too need to be congruent. I need somebody to hold me accountable to my deliverables for a month, for a quarter, for a year. And because somebody's holding me accountable, I know I can't make excuses to myself. I mean, I'll have an idea and go, I'm going to do this. And then when it gets a bit difficult, I go, it was a bad idea. Don't worry about it. But when I've got a coach, the coach says, no. We agreed. It was a good idea. Please deliver. I'm not interested. After you've delivered, we can talk about how maybe it wasn't the best idea, but you're not backing out halfway. I've got somebody holding me accountable, right? So yeah, that's it from me. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and hopefully, if I've added one piece of value to one person's life on this call today, then I've achieved success. But I think we're about halfway, just more than halfway through the program. I'm going to hand over back to Renee, and she will facilitate the way forward for us.
And I think from the first thing I want to say is that engineering versus medicine, engineering all the way. It is the most difficult. I think by the quoting Guinness World Records, the most difficult courses to do. Now that out of the way, as a self bias, I think there's a lot of things that we've touched on. I think I'll start with the first thing he did was, and I think we all should do when we look at our own development, and if we want to choose our own route through our for life, is that he did a feasibility of where his profit would actually come back, and that's 52 years old. If he did medicine after he did engineering. So I think that's a very interesting thing, and he's definitely an engineer at heart. But I also think that from knowing him in the past, that he's definitely born with a lot of entrepreneurship in his blood as well. I think and a few things that to quote him on, and when he was going through the businesses and fixing them as Mr. Fix-It, he didn't work on the technical aspects. He works on the people's aspects. And I think, in our own little capacity, we find that we can also work on the people aspect, and maybe, and that's a blind spot for many of engineers. Improve the people aspect, and maybe you'd run a lot better. He's clearly proudly South African with the last statements of what he said, and I think we all want to be part of driving growth in this country. And I think if everybody can contribute in a similar point of view, like we want to grow this country, and I think we can definitely do it, especially as engineers. And we have the skills. Quoting Jamal here as well, we have the skills. We can create businesses and use our skills to upskill and help people. So, and entrepreneurship is creating jobs. Apparently, corporate, it's not up to corporate and not up to government. It's up to SMEs to create jobs and solve this problem. I do also worry about the debts. When I say debts, the debts that happen over the Easter weekend and things in this country. There's something seriously wrong, and hopefully engineers can solve this problem. But if not, there's something systematically wrong with how our roads are seen and things, because other places in the world, we don't have these fatalities on the road. And I hope that changes. I think there's a few things to address when he talks about the gap between the poor and the rich, and that's why it leads to crime as well as unemployment. And I think that was a very good point to touch on. What was fantastic is that I think when I last met him, he had 40 employees that he employed. Now he has 100 over 4 years, and I think everyone can, if I see that when the poll happened, that a lot of people wanted to be entrepreneurs, and I think you want to be an entrepreneur, but you have to also look back at yourself and think, okay, what am I doing to become an entrepreneur? And when that poll came up, I thought to myself, I didn't know where I was going, and I think that's also important. So know what you want to do, and know yourself, know then what you want to do, and then see what you're going to do to achieve it. And it's very difficult to set a goal when you don't know where you want to go. A very, very important model he puts up. Engineers like models, but I think I was expecting, FHM or something. But he put up a person who's successful takes ownership, takes accountability, and takes responsibility, and that's what leads to success. And on the other side, obviously we don't do that stuff, and you've got excuses, and you have made up denial and believe your own lies, then you end up not successful. And I think that also ties into one of the other aspects, which was he went at pretty hard, and I hope people aren't too taken back by it, but it's right. I mean, sometimes we need someone to tell us, listen, get up and do something. Don't make an excuse. As engineers, I know it's a tough market, but and they are, and the situation is what it is. And Jamal's point was add value. And I think that is actually an interesting thing, because if you go and fill a pothole in some communities, they will make you mayor. I know I will look at you much positive. You got my vote. So I think it is a very good point that was made. He's also written a book, and starts with the end in mind, and I think it's a longer title, but I think it's worth getting. If you're going to start with a book, might as well read that one and move on to maybe Game Changers. I think so there was a lot of going through the levels of, from being level -1 as a student to being where I think most majority of us as an employee on level 0, and to go into entrepreneurship, and it's all about time, money, and what was the last one? Time, money. I forget the last one, but I think it's
Jose,
and
yeah, I think you're having technical issues there, Jose. Can we conclude? Jose, we cannot hear you. Or is it just me? Renee, can you hear him?
No, I can't. He's freezing up. So I think maybe we should just conclude. I'm not sure what's happening.
And it was.
Okay, Renee, if you can conclude, I think we almost there.
Okay. My apologies for that. I'm not sure.
Guys, I'm back, guys. I don't know what it is. You have to redo the link, and it comes back as fresh as it can be. I don't know why is it doing that. I think just to conclude, there was a lot of talk of entrepreneurship, and I think if we do want to be entrepreneurs, we do have to contribute to ourselves and development. That I found very interesting is that little circle that he had of personal development, life, living your 100% life. And I took a snapshot. I'm going to address that with my family as well, trying to get that through. I think a lot of it, and it touched me personally, because a lot of it is like you look at yourself and you're like, what are you doing in this current space of time? And when before you started varsity, I think all of us looked at now as being our goal, and we didn't realize there was more to this. And I hope that we've realized, hey, there's a time to jump into the river, and maybe we want to pick a new river, or find a new area, or set a new goal, entrepreneurship, or manager, or technical expertise. And I think it's time to set those things into motion. And I hope that people go away from today learning one thing, and maybe even taking this into account and putting it forth that will be their goal. And hopefully everyone, and I wish everyone, that they achieve their personal goal and dream. I think last thing is that there is opportunity, so you can send through your CV or business plan to Jamal, and I think that's a wrap up from that side. But I think I just want to remind everyone, listen, there's a CTV, which is a link in the chat box, where you can watch these or other types of webinars and conferences as well, a collection of them, and click like and subscribe, because I've done that. You can gain quite a bit. I'd like to thank the sponsors, being Aeon, Hatch, SMEC, Sutari, Mariswe, RSK Consulting, Jones and Wagner, M&A, and Knight Piesel for sponsoring the YPs. Really appreciate it. And please note there'll be a survey after. Please, after we terminate, and please fill it out. I think it's very useful for us to know if it was useful or similar things are useful, and what else could be a possible events that we could host that could add value. So I'd like to thank our sponsors. I would like to thank our support staff, as well as Gottfried and our tech team. Jamal, thanks so much for that, and Renee for hosting. And thank you all for attending. I would like to terminate this, and I'm so sorry that this video has cut out on me, but I'd like to terminate the session and thank you all. Bye.